Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is a longtime friend of the OPT Network. It's always a great pleasure to have Amy Newmark. You may know her name. She's the author, editor-in-chief, and publisher of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And this morning, Amy joins us to talk about their latest release, Listen to Your Dreams, 101 Tales of Inner Guidance, Divine Intervention, and Miraculous Insight. Amy, good morning and welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I'm so excited about this book. I love talking about it.
I know. Each time you publish a new set of 101 stories, I wonder how it will top itself, but it seems like it always does. And dreams are something that you've done before. Why revisit it again?
I think that dreams are something we all need to be clued into, basically the value of listening to our dreams. So I guess before I started working on dreams books at Chicken Soup for the Soul, I hadn't really thought about the fact that dreams are really your subconscious telling you stuff that it knows about you. And really, you're telling yourself these things. But we're all so busy during our waking hours that we don't listen to that little voice inside us. And so when you're sleeping, that's when your subconscious can say to you, hey, listen, I've been trying to tell you this all day. And so I think that dreams are really valuable because we can use them as a kind of GPS for navigating our lives.
You know, as I was reading Listen to Your Dreams, I started thinking to myself, when was the last time I had a dream? And I know experts say that you're always dreaming, but sometimes we're not maybe remembering our dreams.
Well, a lot of people are reporting that during the pandemic, because they're so stressed out, they've been having vivid dreams every single night, which they sometimes remember, but mostly they don't remember them. They just remember that something disturbing or vivid happened. And that's why we recommend to people, if you have a dream that you think is important, the moment you wake up, jot down a couple of keywords or tell your partner a couple of keywords so that you'll remember that, you know, if you had a dream and there was a dog and there was a roof and it was raining, when you wake up, just say, dog, roof, rain, and then you'll seize it. Because otherwise, you know what happens? You wake up and you're like, I had this dream, poof, it's gone.
Right. And what I love about all of the dreams, the 101 dreams that you all recorded, is that the dreams were very vivid and very detailed, and they were also very guiding for a lot of the people. Talk about, you know, some of those stories, because I know that you probably went through tons and tons of people's dreams before you settled on the dreams that are actually published.
Yeah, we had thousands of submissions for this book, and we wanted to present a real variety of dreams. We also did get a lot of good COVID dreams, so we've got a dozen of those in the book. But the one I chose to start the book, I think, is a really good illustration of the power of dreams. So it's by Kelly Cowell. And Kelly was basically suffering from PTSD because she lost her son who was in the military and was killed in Afghanistan. So she was on her way to her grief therapy group and she took a wrong turn because she was just in a daze. She ended up going down this road and turning around to go back in the right direction. But she turned right in front of this boat that was sitting on the side of the road and it had a for sale sign on it. And then she kept thinking about that boat because she and her son had loved going out on the water together. So she kept thinking about that boat. And then she had this dream in which her son came to her in the dream. And he told her, buy the boat and use it to take returning wounded warriors, veterans, the families of soldiers, take them out on the boat, give them a nice time to help heal them, and you'll heal yourself too. She kept having that dream over and over again. And she really felt like she was talking to her son in her dream. And obviously she could have been, or she could have been manufacturing him using her subconscious. But either way, it was really good advice that she either gave to herself through her son or that her son actually gave her, depending on what you believe could have happened. So she ended up calling the guy who owned the boat. And then when he told her how much it was, she said, oh, I don't have that kind of money, because it was $7,500 and she only had $2,500 available. he kept pressing her to explain why she wanted the boat. She was kind of embarrassed about the dream. She finally told him about the dream. And he said, I'm going to sell you the boat for $2,000. And so she bought the boat and she did exactly what her son had told her to do in the dream. And she has a whole new life now, giving boat rides to wounded warriors and veterans and the families of soldiers. And it makes her feel very close to her son. And it's a great example of how people have these life-changing dreams where they embark on new careers and also where they talk to somebody who they've lost, who they've loved in their dreams. It helps them resolve things.
You know what I thought reading the book? I said, you know, for those people who sort of discount dreams, there were so many instances in the book where people were finding resolve to issues that they had struggled with through dreams. And I know a lot of people say, well, I don't know if that's necessarily real, but people who have had that experience will really get some of the dreams that people have written about in the book, where there was guidance or there was a lesson, you know, like people who had lost their jobs, who had felt devastated and felt defined by their jobs, especially during the pandemic. It was almost like those dreams were a new awakening, like people were going through such a catharsis. But it was in their dream, but they were able to draw on those dreams to press forward in situations where maybe they were just really struggling.
Yeah, people use their dreams a lot to realize that they should make a career change or that they should marry that particular guy who they keep dreaming about, or to resolve relationships. So there was a story called Shredding Sadness by a woman named Susan Jones, and she was shredding papers, just old papers from her past, and that included papers from her past marriage that had ended in divorce. And she was really bothered by these. And then her ex's son came to visit her, and then she dreamed of her ex again, and she realized, wait, yes, it ended in divorce, and the last little bit was bad, but the vast majority of our marriage was really good, and we really did love each other. And she worked through the whole thing in her dream. And then when she awoke, she realized she was no longer angry at her ex-husband. She was no longer stuck in that cycle of anger and lack of forgiveness. And she was able to move forward with her life. So she continued shredding all the old papers, but she realized she was really shredding all of those bad feelings also, and just keeping the good feelings, which were the case for the vast majority of the time she was married to him.
You know, I wondered, because I read that story too, and she said not only was she able to forgive him, but she was able to forgive herself and really look at the good, because oftentimes when relationships are severed like that, most people walk away angry and with all of the feelings that they have. But I just wondered, you know, how people were holding on to their dreams and how these dreams had really, really been so significant that they had taken the time to journal about it, or to hold those memories and that time in their heart in such a way that I believe it's going to affect other people's lives. Did you ever get any feedback about, you know, why people held on to those dreams? Because I'm sure many of them weren't just maybe recent dreams.
No, some of these stories are about dreams that happened 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
But we do hold on to the most vivid dreams. What I love about this book is that, yes, it teaches you that you should listen to your own dreams, but also the lessons that people share with us, the lessons they learn from their own dreams, are lessons that we can now use in our lives without having to have the dreams. Like her lesson that, you know, the vast majority of her marriage was good.
Right.
Well, that's a great lesson for all of us to take, because we all have ex something or other, whether it's an ex-friend, an ex-in-law who we don't really talk to anymore, or an ex-partner of some kind. But it is really a good reminder to think about the 95% of that relationship that was wonderful instead of brooding about the 5% that was not.
Absolutely. Let's take a break here, but when we come back, we'll talk more about some of the dreams that have been chronicled in Listen to Your Dreams, 101 Tales of Inner Guidance, Divine Intervention, and Miraculous Insight. Amy Newmark is our guest this morning. Stay on point. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is Amy Newmark. She is the author, editor-in-chief, and publisher of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And this morning we're talking about the latest release, and it's entitled Listen to Your Dreams, 101 Tales of Inner Guidance, Divine Intervention, and Miraculous Insight. And so during the break, Amy and I were talking about dreams, and I told her, I'm so honored that whenever you guys publish a book, you send it to us and you say, let's talk about it. And one of the last dream books you had, I can't recall who the expert was, but talking about those dreams. And I know as I read this book and the last book about dreams, what it did for me is it brought up a dream, a recurring dream that I had been having that I was never really able to explain. And I think a lot of people have dreams, and especially when they recur. Now, I'm not saying like every night, but every few years or certain points in your life, you'll have a recurrence of almost like the same dream. And I do believe that that's either telling us something or guiding us in a direction or really just intervening in our lives. And sometimes we don't always get it.
Yeah. And if you just say, all right, there's a message in there,
Mm-hmm.
it usually isn't that hard to figure it out. Like our subconscious is pretty obvious when it gives us one of these dreams. Like there was a dream that a woman named Rebecca Radici kept having. It's the third story in the book. And she kept dreaming about a tidal wave. And this tidal wave kept coming at her. She was on the beach and she looked up and there was this massive wall of water coming at her. And she would have this dream whenever she was going through some kind of challenge or she was stressed about something coming up, a business meeting or whatever. And then she finally realized, after having this disturbing dream over and over during the years, oh my gosh, the tidal wave never actually gets me.
Mm,
It's always there, but I'm never actually crushed by the tidal
right.
wave. It never overwhelms me. And then she realized, oh my gosh, every time I have this dream, I'm facing a challenge. I always end up overcoming the challenge. And she finally got the message of her dream. And so it really gave her more self-confidence going forward in her life. Like she said, a challenge has just arisen. I will overcome it because my
Right.
tidal wave dream has told me that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite life-changing when she interpreted that dream, which wasn't all that hard to interpret. That was pretty obvious if you
Right.
just sat down for a moment and thought about it.
And I think a lot of times, especially with so many things happening in the world, our subconscious is so busy internalizing what we think is going to happen, or especially for people who have been displaced or they've lost their jobs or they're uncertain about their business. And I think all of that starts to manifest in your subconscious, and then you start to dream about those things that you meditate on or that you're concerned about. And sometimes if we just open ourselves up to, I believe, a divine source higher and greater than ourselves, which I choose to call God, that God will give us those dreams that assure us that we are going to make it through. We are more resilient than we know, and that if we just keep getting up, keep showing up, that the miracle will happen despite all of the challenges that we're going through.
Yeah. So, I'm a very practical person, and I could argue for most of the dreams in this book that they come from your own subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
helping to guide you. But then there are some stories where I cannot explain them away with my practical point of view.
Right, right.
And they really are great guidance. Like there was a story, it was number 12, and it was by Keisha Reynolds. And Keisha was writing a book about chimpanzees, and she really needed to understand chimpanzees better. And she discovered that she could apply for an internship in Tanzania with Jane Goodall, which, is mind blowing.
Wow.
Right. Everybody, Jane Goodall
Yeah.
is the
We've been
fancy
trying to get
person.
Jane Goodall on the show forever.
Well, so Keisha applied for this internship and got it, which was incredible. But she also had a really good job. And she thought, oh my gosh, I'm doing something crazy. I'm going to chuck this great job to do this crazy thing where I go to Africa for 6 months for this unpaid internship. And 2 weeks before she was supposed to leave, she still hadn't quit the job and she still hadn't decided if she was really going. So she went to work, and her coworker, who wasn't even a friend, she was just a coworker, came over to her and said, Keisha, I had this really weird dream about you last night. I dreamt that you were on the deck of this huge yacht and you were in charge of this yacht. And I was telling you, you had to come back to work. And you told me, Keisha, that you weren't coming back to work because you were living your truth and you were staying where you were. And it was her coworker, and she hadn't told anybody at work that she was contemplating leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So Keisha knew the fact that her coworker had that dream meant that she should absolutely quit her job, which she did immediately. And she went off on that internship with Jane Goodall, which of course was the best thing she ever did in her life. And it just changed the whole path of her life and was so worth doing. But isn't that interesting that her
Yes.
coworker had that dream and knew nothing about this?
Right. And so when you're reading all of these dreams and all of these stories, and you come across a story like Keisha's, what does that do for you in that moment? Because you're trying to find these stories that are going to really impact people and make people think about their own dreams. And when you start to think about the dreams that you're having, whether they're in your subconscious, whether you're asleep having a dream, or whether you're just daydreaming, how critical those dreams sometimes are to your purpose. Because Keisha's purpose was really connected to making this decision.
Yeah, I'm blown away by all of these stories. I really am. And a lot of them give me chills, and we talk about them, among my various editors. I mean, we're all changed as a result of having the privilege of working on these books and reading all of these stories, and not just the 101 that we end up publishing, but the thousands that are submitted. I think it opens our minds to the power of ourselves, right? The power of our own subconsciouses to help guide us, but also to the understanding that sometimes these dreams come from nowhere, and we can't really say, I can't figure out where that came from, so I'm going to deny that it happened. We just have to accept it and learn from it and let us use it as guidance. And that's why we say that one of the things that we do is we change lives one story at a time, because that's really what we do with these books. Any one story in a Chicken Soup for the Soul book can change the life of a reader. And it's really powerful that we can do that. We're also very grateful to the people who share the stories, because often they're sharing some story that they've never even told their family members before, because it's so compelling and so powerful. So they're very unselfish in that they will share these stories with tens of thousands of readers.
I love that. Changing people's lives one story at a time, just as we're trying to change people's lives one conversation at a time. We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we're going to tell you how you can get the newest release, Listen to Your Dreams, 101 Tales of Inner Guidance, Divine Intervention, and Miraculous Insight. Amy Newmark is our guest, everybody. Stay on point. We're back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Amy Newmark is our guest this morning. She's the author, editor-in-chief, and publisher of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And this morning we're talking about dreams. The book is entitled Listen to Your Dreams. But, I started thinking when I picked this book up, Amy, it's not just about, and I said it in the last segment, it's just not about the dreams we have while we're asleep. It's just about dreams in general. And anytime, one of the great things that I love about connecting with you and all of the people that we're able to connect with locally, nationally, and internationally is that every dream, I believe, gives hope to the next person, because there was such stories of like people wanting to write or having it in their physical DNA that they were a writer, but had chosen, because somebody crushed their dream early, that if you choose this profession, you will be struggling. You will be a writer who is broke. And so that person in turn gets a job, but there's never really the fulfillment that your purpose has for you, I believe, on the planet until you start to live and work and walk and breathe that dream. You know, those dreams that happen consciously and subconsciously, I believe that they're given to us for a reason.
Yeah, there was a story from Kristen May Pham. Now, Kristen's really interesting. She writes a lot of stories for us. She was actually one of the Vietnamese refugees who were called the boat people, who left Vietnam in boats after the Vietnam War. And so she came to the United States as a refugee when she was just a little kid. And she's been living in California ever since. She worked in the corporate world for 20 years. She was never really happy because she really wanted to be a writer, but it wasn't practical to be a writer.
Right.
And then she finally had a dream in which a whole screenplay was revealed to her in this dream. So she said, it's all there waiting for me. And so she woke up from that, decided to leave the corporate world, and now she's a professional writer and a very good one. We've published her many, many times. And we see people also dreaming about finding love. And only because they dreamt about a certain man in their dreams did they then be open to that man when they met that man in real life. I mean, we had one story which blew me away. This girl was 12, and there was some stupid superstition about if you did this and that, and you slept upside down with your head at the foot of your bed, and this and that, you would dream about the man you were going to marry, right? So she was 12 years old. So she did all this stuff, and she had this dream about this, tall, dark, and handsome man with an angular face and expressive eyes and this and that. And she never forgot the dream that she had when she was 12. And then when she was 17, her friend asked her to go out on a blind date with some guy who was a friend of her friend's boyfriend. And they were supposed to come and pick her up at her house at 7. And they didn't show up. And finally they showed up at 10. And she was really angry by then. She said, I'm not going out at 10. But she opened the door to tell her friend, I'm not going out with you guys because you're 3 hours late and it's just a blind date. I was just doing you a favor. And there standing in the door is the guy she dreamt about when she was 12. So she opened the door, prepared to tell them to go away. And then she saw him and he put out his hand to shake her hand. She said, you're the man I'm going to marry. And 4 months later, they got married, and they're still married, and they have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And she said, boy, if I hadn't had that dream, there'd be 50 people who wouldn't exist now.
Right. And I think that that's part of the miraculous and the divine that come together in the book. And during the break, I was asking you about your own dreams and some of the things that you had gone through, and you were saying, that your dreams had been used to connect you in a really powerful way.
Well, I had this dream that I was reminded of when we were all, honoring the 9/11 victims. And I remembered this dream that I had had years ago. I had a friend, a neighbor, who lost her husband in the Twin Towers. And I had gone over to see her a day or two after 9/11 when it happened. And then I didn't see her for years and years and years. After the funeral, I didn't see her. And then I had this dream about her. It was probably, 10 years after 9/11. And in this dream, I ran into her on the main shopping street in our town. And I asked her if she was willing to date. And she said, yes, I'm willing to date now. enough time has passed. I'm willing. So that was my dream. And I hadn't seen her. Well,
So
I
did
saw
you
her.
think anything about it after you had had the dream?
Well, it was vivid enough that I remembered it. You know how we hardly remember any of our dreams when we wake up, but this one
Sure.
I remembered. And in the dream, I basically got permission to offer her, a guy for a blind date. And I'm not a matchmaker. I had never ever done a matchmaking thing in my life. So I saw her a few days after the dream.
You
This is
saw her a few days after the dream.
on the main shopping street in my town. So I
But
saw
this is
her.
like you hadn't seen her in like,
I hadn't seen her in 10 years.
wow.
Then I had this dream where I saw her on the main shopping street. And then a few days after I had the dream, I saw her on the main shopping street in my town. And I said, Susan, I had a dream about you. And then I just blurted it out. And I said, I don't know if you're ready, but in my dream you were. And if I ever run into a guy who's right for you, are you open to dating? And she said, well, yes, I haven't been out on any dates, but I am finally ready. So yes, if you find somebody, yes, please pass on my information.
Wow.
So armed with that, I then kept that in my mind, having never done this before in my life. And a couple of months later, I met this widower at my friend's house, and he was looking for a nice Catholic girl who was a widow. And I said, oh my gosh, I have a devout Catholic girl who's a widow who I think you would like to meet. And I put them together and they went on a blind date. And he called me and said, that was a total home run. Thank you so much. So they dated for a couple of years. It doesn't have the ending you think, because he proposed to her, but she ended up saying no.
She said no.
But she said to me, it was a great experience anyway, because it got her out there. It got her back into the dating world. And it was a really wonderful thing for her to finally have recovered enough from losing her husband to actually be with a guy for 2 years. And for him, it got him dating again. And then he ended up marrying somebody else. But
Wow.
anyway, it was really cool that I saw her after dreaming about it. And I don't think I would have had the courage to suggest a blind date to her if I hadn't had that dream and then asked her for her permission.
So did you internalize that? Like, why God would use you through your dream, and then you would, after 10 years, you would just, that's certainly not a coincidence.
I never really thought about it in any kind of divine intervention way. I tend to often have dreams about people who I haven't seen in years, and then I'll run into them like the next day or within a few days. It happens to me all the time, so I've just gotten accustomed to that happening.
Wow. So, Amy, before we've got to let you go, there are so many great stories, and I know many of the stories are so inspiring to those people who, especially those people who think that it's over for me. I've been in this career, and I'm probably always going to be in this career, but my heart's desire is to do something else. And each story that is told speaks to possibility, how when you just trust the process, that you do like what Keisha did. You leave the job that it really doesn't make sense that you would leave the job, but to pursue your purpose, and how powerful that is. And all of the stories just have great lessons, and they're all connected to people's dreams. And so what was your big takeaway from this particular Listen to Your Dreams book, do you think, if there was one?
My big takeaway is that you really should listen to your dreams. There was a woman who had a COVID dream where she dreamt she was in the hospital for COVID, and they kept telling her, you have a fever of 103.5. And they just kept saying 103.5, 103.5. And then she woke up and she realized, okay, I'm home in bed. I don't have COVID, not in the hospital. But why did I keep hearing 103.5? And so she thought, that sounds like a radio station, 103.5. So the next day she was in her car and she thought, I'm going to see if there is a radio station at 103.5, in my local area.
Mm-hmm.
She turned the dial to 103.5, and it was a 45-minute talk show discussion about the exact career that she had been thinking about, but hadn't been able to push herself to go into. And they gave all the advice, what courses she needed to take, everything she would need to do to switch to that new career that she had been thinking about anyway. And it was because she listened to a dream in which the number 103.5 kept coming up, and then turned on her car radio at the exact moment when they were having a talk show about her possible career choice.
I call that divine appointment. The book is entitled Listen to Your Dreams, 101 Tales of Inner Guidance, Divine Intervention, and Miraculous Insight. Amy, how can people connect with Chicken Soup for the Soul, and how can they pick the book up?
So you can always find us at chickensoup.com, and there you'll see Chicken Soup for the Soul, Listen to Your Dreams. If you click on it from our homepage, you can watch our book trailer. You'll see Keisha and the chimpanzees. You'll see some of the other people who I talked about today. And the book is sold at Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever you like to get your books, of course, on Amazon as well.
I love it. Amy, thank you so much for sharing the releases with us, our listeners, and our viewers. It's always a great pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Indeed. Hey, everybody, stay on point. We're back right after this.